officer asks for an opinion.
I'm not sure about our last witness. Tell me, what do you think? Was he telling the truth?
Well, I'm not in a position to say anything about your case.
Well, but surely you have some idea about whether he was believable.
Well, it's not appropriate for me to say anything about the case.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
Well, my position does not allow me to say anything about the case.
If the interpreter has a question or needs a clarification or a repetition, he or she must direct that request to the judge, who may in turn ask others to repeat what was said.
You wouldn't consider yourself a friend of Miss Wolf's then, would you?
Usted entonces no se consideraría amiga de la señora Wolf.
No.
No.
But you knew her well enough to know that she had been given a golden parachute last year?
Your Honor, the interpreter is not familiar with the term. Counsel has used golden parachute. Could he request that it be explained?
Mr. McCann, would you explain the term golden parachute?
Certainly, Your Honor.
Whenever the interpreter needs to consult the witness about a linguistic issue, the interpreter must always ask permission of the judge.
So you became angry with Miss Wolf when you asked her to go to the neighborhood shop.
Entonces usted se enojó con la señora Wolf cuando le pidió que la acompañara a la tienda del vecindario.
What did she say that made you so angry?
¿Qué fue lo que le dijo que la enojó tanto?
Ay, Dios, eso queda por el quinto infierno.
Your Honor, the interpreter is not quite certain what the witness means by the phrase she's used. Could he inquire so that he can clarify the answer?
Yes, go ahead, please.
¿Qué quiere decir usted cuando dice eso queda por el quinto infierno?
Ay, es una expresión nomás. Quiere decir, es demasiado lejos para ir hacia un sitio tan feo.
It's just an expression. It means it's too far to go to such an ugly place. The interpreter is now ready to continue interpreting testimony, Your Honor.
If the witness or defendant asks for clarification of a question or statement, the interpreter simply interprets the witness or defendant's request for all parties in the courtroom. The interpreter leaves it to the person who posed the original question or made the original statement to explain what he or she meant. The interpreter is not to explain what has been said or asked during a court proceeding.
Now, Miss Lopez, you had testified previously that you had been to Miss Wolf's home, is that right?
Ahora bien, señora López, usted había declarado anteriormente que había ido a la casa de la señora Wolf, ¿no es así?
Sí.
Yes.
How is it you would have been there?
¿Cómo es que usted hubiera estado allí?
¿Qué dice? Yo no entiendo la pregunta. ¿Qué es lo que quiere saber?
What does he mean? I don't understand the question. What does he want to know?
Let me rephrase the question. What I'm asking is, why did you go there previously?
If the interpreter makes an error of interpretation, he or she must correct it as soon as possible.
If you're interpreting for a defendant at the table, then of course it's much easier. You just lean over to the defendant and say, I made a mistake. This is what he said. When it's for a testimony that is being taken down on the record, then you must be very clear to make sure that any errors that you become aware of are corrected. At the very first opportunity, you perhaps would not interrupt a question in the middle of a question, but as soon as there is a pause, you would say, Your Honor, the interpreter has become aware that a mistake was made and a correction needs to be made for the record. And just by doing that should be enough to get the judge's attention, and you should have the opportunity to correct your mistake.
The interpreter who has taken the oath is an officer of the court and is ethically bound to remain neutral. Just the mere appearance of bias could put in question the validity of any proceeding.
你认为这场官司他可以打赢吗？
我肯定可以的。
当然如此。今天天气真好，我真想到外面去走。
天气很好，我们这里这几天都蛮好的。
我想是这样的，我想回去做院子。
你的院子大吗？
很小。
那你种花吧。
The interpreter may be the only person in the courtroom who can understand and talk to a defendant or to a witness. There's a natural human tendency that when you're all alone in a place and there's only one person you can talk to, you want to open up to that person and engage in a very intimate conversation with him or her. But this is to be avoided if we allow ourselves to become involved on a personal level with the defendants or the witnesses. Then our impartiality could come into question by the other party.
In a jury trial, the interpreter can have no contact with any member of the jury. Interpreters should avoid undue conversation with attorneys in any proceedings. It is appropriate for the interpreter to ask attorneys to get information or documentation needed to do a good job. But if a defense or prosecuting attorney asks the interpreter to deliver instructions or review or explain documents to a defendant or witness without the attorney present, the interpreter must respectfully decline.
Quiero comprarme una bolsita de pretzel.
I hope so, but pardon me, I'm starving to death. I'd like to get a bag of pretzels.
Gracias.
Oh, excuse me. You'll be interpreting for our next defense witness who's outside the hall. He'll refer to these documents. Please take them to him and explain them to Mr. White's notes so he knows what I'm referring to when I question him.
I'm sorry, Counselor, but I can't do that.
What do you mean you can't do that? I need him to know what these are.
Yes, but it wouldn't be right for me to have such contact with a witness.
But they're just some handwritten notes from the defendant's boss.
Well, I'm not at liberty to speak to a witness without you being present. It would be inappropriate. As an interpreter, I am to remain impartial.
But listen... Oh, of course, you're right. I'm sorry I asked you to do that.
If any situation or problem comes up that interferes with the interpreter's ability to keep a professional distance, the interpreter should immediately notify the Office of Interpreting Services or the Clerk of Court's office. An interpreter should bring to the judge's attention any time he or she is unable to interpret accurately. For example, if interpreter fatigue begins to affect performance after an extended and uninterrupted period of interpretation.
I will confer with the pretrial services officer today or tomorrow at the latest, and we'll have an answer for you then.
Very well.
Excuse me, Your Honor?
Yes, Miss Jane, you have a question?
Yes, Your Honor. The defendant asks to be placed in a halfway house while awaiting trial. Detention causes him great anguish. So, for that reason,
In some cases, a court may authorize two interpreters working together and unobtrusively switching off at appropriate intervals.
And what does the government feel about that?
We would ask to deny that request.
Who did the detention hearing?
I believe it was Judge Hanson, Your Honor.
Well, I'm not prepared to rule on that today. File a motion and I'll rule on that. Are there any guns in this case?
No.
And who are the family members?
his father and two brothers.
This avoids interrupting the proceedings and preserves the accuracy of the interpretation by preventing interpreter fatigue. The off-mic interpreter should remain in the courtroom and pay attention to the progress of the trial.
Well, as I said, I'm not going to rule on that today. Are there any other questions?
Yes, Your Honor.
This resource is not available in all courts and is within the discretion of the court. This introduction has given you a basic understanding of the interpreter's task and obligation when interpreting in court. Interpreters play an important role in these proceedings.
All of the parties in the courtroom depend on your performance. It isn't just the defendant who may be listening to your simultaneous translation. Every party needs to have a correct translation done so that the judicial process can work in the way it was designed to work.
The accurate and impartial language service interpreters provide helps ensure fairness to all non-English speaking defendants in criminal proceedings and helps the federal courts do their work effectively.
Get what?